The first time I noticed something off was late one evening when I walked out to check on the breaker panel near my barn. The old ranch cabin I had just moved into was a peaceful retreat, surrounded by trees and far away from the noise of the city. I had bought this place to get away from everything, but what I didn't expect was that my biggest headache would come from the lady across the dirt road, a woman the neighborhood unofficially called HOA Karen. It started with the power bills. I had gone mostly solar, with only minor reliance on the grid, so my monthly cost should have been negligible. But every time I logged in to check the usage, it was way higher than expected. At first, I thought maybe it was the heating unit, or my freezer. I even double-checked my workshop equipment, but everything lined up. Still, the numbers weren't making sense. Something, or someone, was pulling more electricity than they should have been. That's when I saw it. A thick orange extension cord was running from the far side of my power box, coiled around the back like a snake, and disappearing into the bushes toward the neighbor's property. At first glance, I thought maybe it was some old leftover wiring from the previous owner, but the cable looked too new. I followed it out of curiosity, ducking under branches, my boots crunching on the gravel path that bordered the shared fence. When I reached the end, I saw it clear as day. The cord snaked through a small hole under the fence line and disappeared into the side of Karen's garage. I stood there for a moment, stunned. She was stealing my electricity. I marched right over and knocked on her door. No answer. I waited. Knocked again. Still nothing. But from the corner of my eye, I caught the flicker of blinds being pushed aside. She was in there, watching me, probably hoping I'd just go away. I didn't. Eventually, I gave up and returned to my cabin. The next morning, I decided to try again. I'm a reasonable man. I believe in talking things out before raising hell. So I walked over, rang the doorbell, and waited. This time, she answered. Karen looked exactly like the type of woman who'd volunteer to be the neighborhood dictator, neat blonde bob haircut, clipboard sitting on a hallway table behind her, and an expression that screamed condescension. She gave me a tight, fake smile. "Can I help you?" she said sweetly, though her eyes were sharp. "Yeah," I said. "I think your garage is plugged into my power box." She laughed, actually laughed, like I had told her a joke. "Oh that?" she said, waving it off. "It's just temporary. My husband's working on some things in the garage and we needed a little bit of juice. You've got solar, right? I figured you wouldn't mind." Without asking me? She blinked, surprised I wasn't playing along. "We're neighbors. And technically, the HOA says all resources should be shared if they benefit the community." I looked her dead in the eye. "My land isn't under HOA control." Her smile cracked. "That's debatable. Your property line runs right up to the neighborhood. And if you're living here, you should follow our standards. I'll be bringing it up at the next board meeting." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. I didn't argue. I just turned and walked away. But I didn't forget. As soon as I got back to the power box, I yanked the cord out, locked the panel with a heavy-duty latch, and installed a trail cam just in case she tried anything again. For a couple of days, nothing happened. The cord was gone. I figured maybe, just maybe, she had taken the hint. I should have known better. 3 days later, I came out to feed my chickens and saw the orange cord again. This time, it wasn't just plugged into the outlet on the side of the box. Karen had actually opened the maintenance panel at the bottom of the unit and wedged it directly into a live terminal. I nearly lost my mind. This wasn't just stealing anymore. It was dangerous. But what she didn't know, and this is the part that still makes me shake my head, was that the power box wasn't just for electricity. When I moved in, I had upgraded the system to handle multiple roles. It was connected not only to my solar array, but also to my septic tank's alert system. The idea was simple: if something started to overflow or back up, the system would trigger a signal to shut off the pumps, send me a notification, and go into a safety mode to avoid disaster. But if someone interfered with it, like, say, jamming an extension cord into a port they had no business touching, the results could be unpredictable. And that's exactly what happened. Because, as luck would have it, that week we got hit by 2 straight days of heavy rain. My septic system, already nearing capacity, was getting overwhelmed. The pump struggled to keep up. The sensors were screaming for attention. But Karen's illegal connection had bypassed part of the safety circuit. Instead of shutting down quietly, the system sent an override signal through the exact port she had tapped into, triggering a minor power surge and a foul-smelling mess that ended up backtracking through the line. And it went straight into her garage. From what I later heard, her husband had opened their fridge in the garage that evening, just as the septic system tried to reset. The lights flickered. There was a pop. And then the smell hit them like a truckload of rotten eggs. They had a freezer full of meat that thawed and reeked. But worse? The septic system's surge had pushed a bit of backflow into their power strip. It didn't take much. Just enough moisture and heat to cook everything connected, tools, chargers, even the washer. Fried. Karen tried to blame me. But she had no idea what I had installed next. Full video of her trespassing, clear audio of her admitting it, and a signed statement from the septic tech who had installed the backup system confirming the risk of tampering. I wasn't just dealing with a nosy neighbor. I was dealing with someone who thought she could run my land like it was her property. And she was about to learn just how wrong she was. Karen thought she had the upper hand. In her mind, she was the queen of the cul-de-sac, the self-proclaimed enforcer of rules, regulations, and whatever petty guidelines she made up on the spot. But what she didn't realize was that I had come prepared. This wasn't my first time dealing with someone who confused nosiness with authority. I'd lived in small towns before, I knew the type. And this time, I wasn't about to back down. After that septic surge fried her garage and left her whole house smelling like a landfill on a hot summer day, I expected she might knock on my door, maybe even try to apologize or explain. But no, Karen doubled down. 2 days later, she stood on the edge of her yard with her arms crossed and a smug expression on her face as 2 HOA board members in cheap polo shirts and clipboards strutted up my gravel driveway like they were FBI agents. "Mr. Turner," the taller one said, barely glancing at me, "we've received a formal complaint about unauthorized and hazardous electrical work on your property. We're here to inspect your setup and ensure it's compliant with HOA safety codes." I raised an eyebrow. "You guys realize I'm not part of your HOA, right?" He scoffed. "That's actually being disputed. Your property falls within the historical perimeter of the association, and due to some recent community concerns, we're initiating an investigation. And you think that gives you the right to walk onto my private land?" They exchanged looks, clearly not used to being challenged. "If you refuse to cooperate, we can escalate this to county code enforcement." Now I was done playing nice. "Stay right there," I said. I walked back into my cabin, grabbed my folder, thick with documents, screenshots, property maps, and signed letters, and came back out with everything I needed to shut this circus down. I handed them the original property deed from 1986, clearly showing my land existed before the HOA was ever formed. Then I flipped to the next document, a certified letter from the county confirming my property was exempt from all HOA bylaws due to a grandfather clause. But I wasn't done. I opened my phone and showed them a video clip from the trail cam. There, in clear 1080p footage, was Karen sneaking across the fence at dusk, looking around, then jamming the orange cord into my power box like a thief in the night. The HOA men looked rattled. "And just in case that wasn't enough," I said, flipping to the next page in the folder, "here's a signed inspection report from an independent electrician. It confirms the septic surge only happened because of unauthorized interference from an external source, namely, her. They went pale. Karen, still watching from across the road with her phone in hand like she was recording her big victory, suddenly started to shift uncomfortably when one of the men turned to glance back at her. "Mr. Turner," the shorter board member mumbled, "this seems like a misunderstanding." "Oh, it was never a misunderstanding," I said, "it was theft. Trespassing. And reckless tampering with a residential septic system, which by the way, could qualify as a health code violation." I stepped closer. "Now if you want to keep playing HOA sheriff, I'd be more than happy to call the county myself. But something tells me you'd rather keep this quiet." The two board members looked at each other, then at Karen. They knew they'd overstepped. Badly. "Have a good day, Mr. Turner," the tall one muttered, turning around and motioning for his buddy to follow. They walked back to Karen, who began arguing with them right there on the sidewalk. She was pointing, red-faced, trying to defend herself, but they weren't listening anymore. I watched them leave with a deep satisfaction. But I wasn't finished yet. That night, I installed motion sensors and upgraded my fence with a small, legal electric deterrent, nothing lethal, just enough to make anyone think twice. I wasn't about to let her try that stunt again. The next day, a sheriff's deputy came by, not to investigate me, but to deliver a cease and desist order I had filed with a lawyer. Karen was officially prohibited from accessing my property, my utilities, or tampering with anything on my land. Violation would mean criminal charges. When the deputy knocked on her door and handed her the paper, I was sipping coffee on my porch, watching it all unfold. She looked like she'd just swallowed a lemon whole. That was the last time I saw that orange cord. In fact, for weeks after, she barely even looked in my direction. Her yard, once pristine and micromanaged, started getting weeds. The HOA board stopped making their rounds, too. I guess even neighborhood tyrants know when they've picked a fight with the wrong person. But just to be sure, I kept the trail cam rolling. Because if there's one thing I've learned about people like Karen, they always come back for one last swing. And I'd be ready when she did. A week passed without any more surprises. The orange cord was gone, the HOA board had backed off, and Karen had retreated into silence. I thought maybe, just maybe, that would be the end of it. I should have known better. People like Karen don't go away quietly. When they lose control, they don't admit defeat, they get sneakier. And that's exactly what she did. It started with small things. My mail began arriving late or not at all. Packages marked "delivered" would mysteriously disappear. One day, I found fresh tire tracks across the edge of my property near the back trail, where no one had any business driving. Then my fence, the same one she snuck through to steal power, was mysteriously damaged one night, a few wires snipped just enough to weaken the structure. It was clear she wasn't finished with me. So I decided to get creative. If Karen wanted to poke the bear, I was going to make sure she regretted it. Not with violence, not with screaming matches. But with one carefully planned, entirely legal surprise. I made a call to an old buddy of mine who worked in private security tech. He owed me a favor from years back. Within days, I had a new system installed, a set of silent alarms, hidden cameras with night vision, and best of all, a fake electrical panel designed to look exactly like my original power box. But this one wasn't connected to anything useful. Except the septic tank's surge overflow valve. Yup. I wired that fake panel so that if anyone tried to tamper with it, let's say by plugging in a cord or poking around inside, it would trigger a small, harmless but incredibly disgusting burst from the overflow pipe, hidden just a few feet away under some bushes. I tested it myself. It worked perfectly. No damage. No danger. Just one foul-smelling spray right in the direction of whoever was dumb enough to mess with it. Then I waited. I didn't have to wait long. Late one night, around 11:30 p.m., my phone buzzed. The motion sensor had tripped. I pulled up the camera feed and, sure enough, there was Karen, crouched next to the fake panel with a flashlight and gloves on. She looked around, then reached into her bag. Orange cord. I nearly laughed out loud. She tried to be careful, slowly opening the latch, whispering to herself. Then she jammed the plug into the socket. Splat. The camera didn't catch sound, but her body language said everything. She jumped back like she'd been shot, tripped over the bucket she'd brought, and landed flat on her back in the mud. From the second cam, I could see the blast had hit her square in the chest, septic overflow, tinted green from the dye we used in the test. She scrambled to her feet, gagging, slipping again in the grass, and finally ran off, dragging the stinking cord behind her like a guilty dog with its tail between its legs. The next morning? Oh, it was beautiful. Her driveway smelled like a dumpster behind a fish market. Her car's front seat had a garbage bag laid across it. I assumed she didn't want to ruin the upholstery. She stood out front with a hose, furiously scrubbing something off her gloves and boots, looking around as if daring someone to laugh. I didn't laugh. I waved. She didn't wave back. That afternoon, I printed stills from the security cam, nothing too graphic, just a nice frame of her mid-spray with the cord in hand, and taped it to a sheet of paper that read. Second attempt, documented. Next time, sheriff gets the footage. I slid it into her mailbox, along with a fresh copy of the cease and desist order. From that moment on, things got real quiet. No more tampering. No more HOA surprise visits. No more cords, no more stunts. Karen stopped walking her dog past my property. She stopped watering her flowers like she used to, instead retreating to the back of her house, out of view. Rumor around the neighborhood was that she had petitioned the HOA board to add security lighting near her driveway after a horrible prank, but no one took her seriously anymore. I had won, not with threats, not with force, but by beating her at her own game. And trust me, I saved that footage in 3 separate cloud accounts. Because if Karen ever gets another wild idea, she'll be reminded of one very important lesson. You don't mess with a rancher who knows his power lines, or his plumbing. The weeks rolled by, and with each passing day, the peace on my ranch felt more earned. I got back to doing what I loved, tending to my chickens, fixing up the barn, and enjoying quiet mornings with hot coffee and the sunrise. Karen hadn't so much as looked in my direction since the septic spray incident. If humiliation had a face, it was hers the morning after, trying to scrub the stench off her porch like it was a bad dream. But deep down, I knew it wasn't over. You see, people like Karen don't forget. They nurse grudges like stray cats, feeding them, talking to them, letting them grow wild in the back of their minds. And just when you think they've moved on, they pounce. It happened one Friday evening. I had just gotten back from the feed store when I noticed something strange. My gate, the main entrance to my property, was wide open. Not just unlocked, open. Swung all the way back like someone had barged through without a care. I always kept it latched. Always. At first, I figured maybe the wind did it, or a delivery guy had forgotten to shut it. But when I got out of the truck, I saw the tire tracks. Deep, muddy, leading all the way down to my barn. Not mine. And then I saw her. Karen was standing near my barn door, hands on her hips, yelling into her phone, pacing like she owned the place. I kept my distance and started recording on my phone. I told you already, she snapped, her voice shrill, this lunatic has illegal wiring back here. It's endangering the whole neighborhood. Yes, I broke in. Because no one else will enforce safety here. She turned, and froze when she saw me. You're trespassing, I said calmly. You're the one committing utility fraud, she shrieked, waving her phone like a badge. I have the HOA president on the line right now. I'm reporting this whole setup. You've got hidden septic lines, unauthorized power routing, who knows what else. I almost laughed. Lady, the only unauthorized connection out here was yours. She stormed toward me, ranting. This entire area should fall under HOA control. You think you're special because you live on a ranch? We have rules. I didn't say a word. I just stepped to the side and pointed. Behind her, a sheriff's deputy was pulling into the driveway. Blue lights flashed. My call from earlier had gone through. Karen turned white. The deputy stepped out, sunglasses on, hand resting on his belt. Ma'am, he said coolly, can you explain what you're doing on private property without permission? She sputtered. I am part of the HOA board. I'm enforcing a neighborhood violation. The deputy didn't blink. This land is not under your HOA's jurisdiction. You're trespassing. Now step away from the barn. I was trying to protect the community, she insisted, her voice climbing in pitch. He's dangerous. I handed over the phone with the video recording, showed him the camera footage from the earlier incident, and presented the updated documentation, all neatly backed up, date-stamped, and verified. The deputy took one look at Karen, then back at me, and gave a small nod. He turned to her. Ma'am, you've been warned before. There's already a cease and desist order on file. This is a violation of that order and unlawful entry. Please place your phone on the ground and turn around. The moment those cuffs clicked onto her wrists, something changed. Karen didn't scream. She didn't argue. She didn't say a word. She just stood there, humiliated, while the deputy walked her to the patrol car. The neighborhood busybody, the queen of the HOA, arrested in broad daylight, on camera. It wasn't about revenge. It wasn't even about the stolen electricity anymore. It was about drawing a line. People like Karen get away with things because most folks don't stand up to them. They assume the rules don't apply to them, until they meet someone who knows the law just as well, and isn't afraid to use it. The deputy thanked me for being patient and level-headed. He said Karen would likely face fines, maybe even a short stay in county lockup, depending on how the court viewed the violation of the protection order. But whatever the sentence, the message was clear. Her reign was over. Weeks later, her house went up for sale. The listing was quiet, no open house, no signs in the yard. I heard whispers around the community, something about the HOA board asking her to step down for mental health reasons. Call it what you want, but the truth was simple. The neighborhood had seen what she really was. And no one wanted to be on her side anymore. Now, the ranch is peaceful again. No cords, no arguments, no fake inspections. Just the way I like it. Sometimes, when I sit on my porch and look across the road at that empty driveway, I smile a little. Because when you live off the grid, protect your land, and stand your ground, no HOA, no Karen, and no orange cord can ever shake you. And just in case someone else gets any bright ideas, let's just say the septic alert system is still fully operational.